Hi all, namaste to everybody, and a warm welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to people in different parts of the world. I just wanted to make sure to check everyone. Am I audible, visible? Just let me know. Just confirm that you're able to hear my voice. Thank you. So let me start with Tavamitram. I'm Dr. Paras, and Tavamitram is a not-for-profit initiative that aims at raising mental health awareness across the globe. The idea took shape in 2016 and was founded on 15 June 2016 by Ekta and me. We have a team of roughly 50 members who act as a Mitra Global volunteers. The aim of this platform is to create congruency in thinking, feeling, and actions. So this month and this year, 2020, we launch a knowledge-based video series, My Mental Health, My Priority, that aims at spreading the knowledge at no cost. So far, we have crossed 6,000 plus registrations across the globe, and the participation still continues. So this evening, on the occasion of World Mental Health Day, we announced the launch of Tavamitram in Hindi on 10th of October 2020, and we will keep you posted for the further things. So 10th October being the World Mental Health Day, hence in October 2020, Tavamitram is running a campaign, a series of campaigns on mental health matters. And today, I would like to talk to you about an appealing topic: one world, many minds, mental health to mental well-being. And our panel is very interesting. We have people joining us from different countries like Malaysia, UK, India, South Africa, Turkey, who are going to help us understand the global perspective of mental well-being. So let me introduce to all our panel members one by one. So first, I want to invite in our panel discussion, Swee. Swee, namaste from Malaysia, Swee. Thank you. So Swee is a leadership assessor, executive coach, and career transition coach based out of Singapore and Malaysia. She has more than 27 years of industry experience, having the first half of her career in IT consulting, country and regional practice leadership, and then switched to personal, organizational, and community developmental work. Her coaching and facilitation practice is grounded on Gestalt philosophies, it's one of my favorites, and her own personal character and spiritual growth. So, Swee, thank you for joining, and warm welcome to you on this panel.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So let me introduce to you our next panelist. Our next panelist, it gives me an immense pleasure to introduce Cindy Muthukarapan from South Africa. Namaste, Cindy, to you. And a warm welcome for being a part of this panel discussion. So let me talk to you a little bit about Cindy. Cindy is an internationally recognized executive and leadership coach, trainer, coach assessor, mentor coach, and program director. She is an ICF Master Certified Coach and mentor coach to many globally. She's an active contributor to the field of leadership development, partnering with those who want to create ripples of positive change in themselves, their organizations, and communities. She says, "My way of being is evolving, integrating a high level of coaching skills, a wealth of people developmental experience, collaborations and partnership, and a fair amount of quiet time out, all increasing my contribution footprint." And also, Cindy has been my mentor, my teacher, my best friend, and a wonderful person. So warm welcome to you, Cindy, to this panel, and happy to have you on this panel. So let me also take the opportunity to introduce to our next panel member. Her name is Morwenna. Am I able to pronounce your name correctly this time, Morwenna?
Very close, Morwenna.
Morwenna. So Morwenna is from the UK. She's an executive coach and communications professional with over 20 years' experience in the public and private sector. She has special interests in disability, neurodiversity, mental health, and mental well-being. Morwenna manages a team of coaches for the Care Quality Commission, an arm's-length healthcare body funded by the UK's Department of Health. The team does a mix of pure coaching and coaching for writing and communication skills. Morwenna also coaches executives in the public sector with a specialization in coaching disabled people and those who face other structural barriers. So a warm welcome to you, Morwenna, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
So let me also introduce to our next panel member is Dr. P.V. Murthy. So Dr. P.V. Murthy is from India. He currently serves as an Executive Vice President and Global Head Human Resource at the Indian Hotels Company Limited. Before IHCL, Dr. Murthy served the Coca-Cola Company, TCCC, for a period of 15 years as its Executive Director, Human Resources for Southeast Asia. He is an alumnus of INSEAD and has a PhD in Strategic Human Resource Management. He is also a qualified executive coach. So thank you so much, Dr. Murthy, and warm welcome to you in this panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Paras. Thanks for having me on this panel.
Yes. So the next person is very interesting. I'm very fond of this person. Her whole work in climate change has been very interesting, and I'm so fan of her. So let me introduce to you Rashmi Shetty from India. So Rashmi Shetty says, an attitudinal and voice coach who is a catalyst with women leaders in transition. I believe that good mental health is about having the courage to work on the balance and accepting who you are and what the world tells you you are. That was a fabulous introduction, very short and sweet, with such an amazing depthness of work that you do. So thanks for joining us, Rashmi, and warm welcome to you on this panel.
Pleasure mine, Paris.
Okay, and let me introduce to you our next panelist is Dr. Riza. So Dr. Riza Kadilar is the president of EMCC Global, alumni of Stanford University, HEC Paris, METU, and INSEAD. Dr. Riza Kadilar is a PhD in media economics. His professional career includes senior level bank management in France, UK, Netherlands, and Turkey. He's the author of 5 published books and a columnist at Bloomberg Businessweek Turkey. He contributes to a democratization of learning and development with his online learning platform, RK Academy, and also with the EMCC Quality Award recipient online micro-credential course, MOOC, on coaching and mentoring. Dr. Kadilar is a visiting professor in various universities and has delivered numerous motivational speeches during the last 20 years in more than 30 countries, and recently on online platform reaching more than 10,000 individuals. Something very interesting about Dr. Kadilar is he's one of the most amazing person in EMCC, and there are so many people who love him and his leadership skills. So a warm welcome to you, Dr. Kadilar.
Pleasure being here. Thank you very much, Dr. Farah. Don't raise the expectations too much, please.
It's what I feel I'm sharing with you. Yeah. And the last but not the least is a wonderful person I interacted, and I felt amazing. She's one of the best panelist members for this session today is Summers. So this is Summer Davidson. Namaste, Summers.
Namaste.
She is 27 and currently living in London. She has been on both sides of the mental health services, working as a mental health nurse for the past 5 years, and also being a service user. She has struggled with addiction and adult ADHD and hopes that by discussing the topic, it will raise awareness of the importance of talking about mental health. She feels there is still a lot of stigma in the UK around mental health and thinks this needs to change. So thank you so much, Summers. I think it's a fabulous topic and it's a wonderful time to have this discussion and a and look forward to see at a global perspective what's happening around. So let me check if there are any question or anyone has anything raised. Feel free, just checking if there are any questions as well. Okay. So before we could move on to today's topic, I would like to share mental health is critical for one's well-being and is also directly related to physical health. According to the surveys, mental health disorders are widespread across the globe. Many cases are often never detected or resolved, while makes it difficult to understand the spread of mental health disorders the world over. So the global data by WHO, World Health Organization, outlines suicide as the second leading cause of death for age groups of 15 to 29 at a global level. So strengthening mental health thus is a primary concern according to WHO, and depression itself will be the second largest disease worldwide this year. While the general perception is changing the world over, there are many ways one can fight mental illness. Globally, the world has woken to many ways to lead a happier life. I think the importance of mental health is increasing all over the world today. This means the world is finally ready to make the move from worrying about mental health to focusing on habits to improve mental health. So let me ask my first question to all my panel members. So, how is mental health perceived in your respective country? I would probably like to ask Dr. Riza first, and then Swee, then Dr. Murthy, Cindy, Rashmi, Morwenna, and Summers. Over to you, Dr. Riza.
Yeah, very quickly, I live in the Netherlands with my family, and my work is based in Istanbul, Turkey, and I'm originally from Turkey and citizen of two countries. Before going to specific of those countries, maybe what I'm going to say is more global. Dr. Yuval Harari says democracy is all about asking the citizens, how do you feel about issues, rather than what do you think about these issues. And these feelings, I think it's a global issue now. In every country, we are facing a more and more polarized societies. It serves the purpose of the system in a way, but it creates stress because maybe it's part of this post-truth age, or maybe it's just because of this digital emotional contagions that's fueled by social media. I think humanity is really under pressure, and unprecedented pressure, because you are just about 30 centimeter, 12-inch away from my brain. And I don't think my brain anthropologically makes the distinction whether you are in the room or not. I can smell you, but for the rest, I feel like you are here. And when I'm exposed to all these polarized issues, the impact in Turkey, I realize, and it really serves the purpose of maybe the current government, it creates more and more enthusiasm to go to a fight, anger, you know. And in the Netherlands, especially with the pandemics and everything, and the very, very competitive business environment, what we see is burnout. In every company, in every part of society, burnout is becoming a real issue. It is a real issue. So we're going to elaborate more, but I would say technology, together with the priorities of today's political leaders, I may say, fuel this stress that cause, I think, more and more issues when it comes to mental health of populations at large.
Thank you, Dr. Riza. Over to you, Swee.
Thank you, Dr. Faraz. I think it's really interesting. The word mental health in itself should actually indicate mental well-being. But the very word mental health, the moment we hear of it, there's a stigma attached to it. So in preparation for today's session, I thought I went and interviewed a few friends, and when I interviewed them, the first thing that they say is there's a stigma attached to mental health. So that's what I get from my network around here. That's what I get from people around here. So, and I as I look back, the first time I heard about the word mental health was a few years ago. And at that time, it was just the word mental health. And immediately the perception that comes into my mind is psychiatric treatment, right? And the interesting thing is that in this year itself, the word mental health kept coming up. And so it goes to show that the mental well-being of people are at risk right now. Yeah. And so I was then interested to take a look at statistics, and I went in and did some research, and I found a mental health handbook that was published by the Malaysian Mental Health Association and the Malaysian Psychiatric Association. And I was shocked to see that they say that there's a forward there that says by 2020, mental illness is expected to be the second biggest health problem affecting Malaysians after heart disease. And according to the National Health Mobility Survey in 2015, every 1 in 3 adults aged 16 years and above in Malaysia suffer from some form of mental health issues. The other interesting thing is they say that the prevalence of mental health problems among adults and children are 29.2% and 12.1% respectively. So it goes to show that while there's a stigma attached, it is a very widespread problem. So right now the whole world is talking about COVID, right? But mental health, I think, is something that has really it's really prevalent. And if you ask me personally, individually, my own personal view is everybody has some form of mental health issue. So whether it's just a matter of to what degree, right? Whether it's just normal anxiety or whether it goes down to the level of requiring some mental, some health, some medication and some health, some form of going to the healthcare for
True.
health. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that space. What I also learning from you as you're sharing is that it's important to highlight that we all go through mental health is not a shame, and it's important to reach out and ask for help rather than making it worse and impacting big ways. So thanks so much once again, Sweelan. I also have another speaker who was not able to log in because of some technical glitch. So let me introduce to her on this panel. That's Carol Davidson. Hi, Carol. Namaste
Hi.
to you.
Namaste. Apologies, technology. We have an engaging storm outside the window here with howling winds. So I'm back online and pleased to join you, but I'm not sure where you're up to, so you'll have to bring me in the loop again.
So we're just checking about how is the mental health perceived in your country. So,
Okay.
I'm going to be connecting Dr. Murthy, and then I'll come back to you, Carol.
Okay.
Yes. To answer your question as to how mental health is perceived in my country, perhaps India. I know I'm from India, and I have lived all my life in India. I was born and brought up in India. Of course, I had the opportunity to work outside and see as to how the world looks at mental health. In India, from my perspective, there is complete lack of awareness around mental health. Let me substantiate my argument. India consists of 600,000 villages. That's, we know the kind of population we have got in India. And when we look at all these villages, what strikes us is that there is completely lack of awareness. There are all kinds of myths, wrong beliefs and notions around mental health. even in cities, when we look at the kind of awareness people have got among the educated lot, there is some amount of stigma. That's one thing. And second is there is complete lack of facilities. It's the when we look at the data, the World Health Organization data, India do not really have the required workforce that is needed to take care of the mental health issues, whether it is the psychiatrists or the psychologists or the nurses or the social workers. It is stated that per 1 lakh population, the psychiatrists are 0.03. So that's the level. Even when we look at other statistics for nurses or psychologists or social care workers, it is something like 0.012, 0.07 kind of a thing. This brings us to the point that there is complete lack of awareness. Perhaps the reason is that India is an evolving economy. India is now coming onto the global map in terms of an emerging economy. But at this point in time, from my perspective, the awareness completely lacks around mental health issues, and there is a great need for bringing that awareness in India. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy. Over to you, Rashmi.
Well, completely agree with what Dr. Murthy said. And beyond that, what I'd like to say is, yes, it's a stigma. But the sad part is many people are not even aware. And a recent survey reveals that 2 in every 5 Indian professionals are in distress. And it's alarming. It's pretty serious, especially now with the pandemic. One thing that has risen is the lack of job security. So people are not sure when they would get the pink slip. So it's really hurting them. Relationships are very superficial. People don't even realize they're having a problem. And there was a steep rise, according to surveys that happened in the last 6 months itself. And one thing that is very evident is domestic violence. Since I work a lot with women, and it's not that it's only the rural women, it's the educated, so-called educated, literate class, where it's unbelievable. But just from March till May end, which was the lockdown period, there was 100% increase in the number of complaints that came with domestic violence. So suddenly people realize something is wrong, but they're not able to put their finger. And it's really time that we take this seriously and not treat it like a stigma, like Dr. Murthy said. And in fact, with women in particular, they say Indian women are on the verge of a mental health crisis like never before, and therefore need respite care, they need space, and they need a space to actually vent out and not feel judged. That is missing because nobody thinks talking about a space, because women are naturally seen as caregivers, and it's many roles that they split themselves into. And therefore, finding themselves in the process of justifying your husband at home, the child who's studying at home, online schooling, your work, and then suddenly time just flies, but nothing under control. So this, I think, Paris, is a wonderful initiative because at least we can bring it to drawing rooms and talk about it. It's still a taboo subject. I only wish this can create the first step towards making it an open conversation where people can come out and share what they feel like. So yes, not a very good state in India.
Thanks for sharing that, Rashmi. What I also look at when you're talking about women in India who have gone through this and who are a part of going through playing different roles, forgetting their identity as what they are. So this role conflicts,
yes,
and that impacting mental health in a big way. I think being natural caregivers, yes. Only we had a session on women on the similar topic, and a lot of conversation came on the same line. So thanks for bringing that to the drawing room. Thank you. So over to you, Morwenna.
Thanks, Paris. And it's fascinating to hear everybody's perspective from around the world. I think, so I'm in my mid-40s now. When I was in my teens, a bit like Summer, I had some mental health issues myself, and I think the difference between then and now is quite stark in the UK. There is a lot more acceptance, but there is definitely still taboo and stigma around. And I think it really varies from sections of society. In professions as well, it's still very taboo, certain professions, maybe more sort of macho professions. There's a difference obviously between men and women. There's a difference between the public and private sector. So I work mostly in the public sector, and we're quite, you know, cool and woke about all those kinds of issues, and we talk about it a lot. But I suspect in the private sector it's less so. So I'd be interested if other people think that is the case as well. But I think in some sections of society, people who are in positions of privilege, famous people basically, are becoming more and more open about their struggles. Recently, we had a famous cricketer in the UK talk about his struggles with an eating disorder, and that I think was incredibly valuable for people to hear that kind of thing, and to sort of start breaking down that stigma. But yeah, it is still seen as it's more a female thing. It's probably more, you know, acceptable for women to talk because women talk and men don't. Yeah. So, and I think in the UK there's also quite a lot of class stigma as well. We're talking about that where I work at the moment, about the impact of class. And obviously, if you're, you know, you have tons of money and all the rest, it's a very different ball game than if you are really struggling to make ends meet. So I think it really varies across all sorts of different characteristics in society. Yeah.
Thanks for having that, bringing a very open perspective to explore. Thank you, Morwenna. So over to you, Summers.
Hi. Well, in my opinion, and it is just my personal opinion, I feel that whilst in the UK we've come a long way in our public perception and awareness of the parity of mental and physical health, I still feel that there's a long way to go in terms of challenging the stigma, and especially in terms of making services a lot more accessible for people. I think the UK has always taken quite a heavily medicalised model when it comes to mental health, especially when it comes to treating mental illness. You know, you go to a GP for depression, you get given antidepressants. You know, you have to go into a mental health hospital with schizophrenia. You're going to get given antipsychotics with or without your permission. You know, you'll be lucky if you have to ask for counselling, and it's, you know, any quicker than an 18-month waiting list for things like psychology and DBT. I think if you've got the money, then there's a lot of services available, but it's like anything, I suppose, in that respect. Not sure how fair that is. I think from my experience working in mental health, there's definitely some mental health problems, mental health illnesses that are regarded with less stigma than others. Personality disorders are probably the most stigmatized within my field, I'd say. I think people in the UK, in my opinion, people from the UK don't mind talking about the sort of more mild aspects of mental health problems, like social anxiety, low mood, things like that, but not so much the kind of harmful and less sort of clean-cut symptoms. I think we've just got to remember that it's an illness, not a choice.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you, Summers, for bringing that perspective. Carol, would you like to share your thoughts as well?
Yes, sort of just adding my thoughts from the UK perspective, and totally agree with Morwenna and Summer. My perspective, I grew up, my father was a mental health nurse all his working life. And I grew up when mental health and associated it, thought of it as only as institutionalized. So I used to go where my dad worked, and people were locked away if they had mental health. And there was stigma about this. And I, as a child, sort of grew up not understanding, playing with children, that I could understand why they were locked in this institution, But I think it's just been hugely since then in the UK. Certainly the awareness has grown, and I think for the first time in the last year or so, people are less afraid to suggest that they have issues. And I think from my coaching hat, I hear even people like nurses and doctors talking about it in terms of their own mental health, which, you know, really came as a surprise to me. Which just goes to show that every in their life at some stage can be in this situation. And as you know, it is an illness that has to be recognised. But I do think the profile in the UK in the last few years, due to public bodies and celebrities, has been still a long way to go. But I think at the moment with the pandemic, the biggest barriers I come across is the anxiety and the fear, and how and where people go to be able to get support for that. But yes, come a long way from when I remember back to being a child and growing up with it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carol, once again. Over to you, Cindy.
So, you know, I don't know where's my start point here, because there's quite a few thoughts in my head that I want to say on this topic. But I think what's becoming obvious is that it's now a much more spoken about topic. People are not in isolation or not feeling that there's some stigma attached to talking about it, and finding there are spaces. So spaces have been created, platforms, resources more available to people suffering mental issues. Now, having said that, a lot of people are not sure how to position the stress and anxiety they feel. They're not even sure themselves whether it is a mental issue or whether it's just a normality of everyday living. Because, you know, in South Africa, there are many issues, and there's a certain amount of normality, normal stress and anxiety that's there on an everyday basis. And there are times when people reach out at the appropriate times when they're beginning to feel overwhelmed, reach out to the right authorities or to people that can help them. And there are times that they don't. So what I would say overall is that there is a growing awareness, and there are more platforms that people can reach out. I wish we could do much more, as in reaching more people. But I have a feeling that there is an awareness for enough happening at the moment.
Thank you. So for me, when I'm learning about everybody, just wanted to share my thoughts. In my country, I think culture and gender has a lot of boundaries about how do you experience your emotions and how do you communicate and express it out. So what you're bringing about the normalizations, and I just wanted to expand that. When I was in my growing age, it was normalized that this is what you will feel if there's a pressure going on for your exams. But how dysfunctional is the pressure, I never had the permission to talk about. I come from a middle-class family. A middle class is just managing the financially and growing. But there is a lot of strata of society where I have seen people where mental health was completely to religion. So that was another point also, where people are not acknowledging what's happening to them. They tend to put it up in a form of some sort of punishment or some sort of meditation process where, hey, just pray for it and it will all get over. So when I'm listening to it, there's a huge context even about culture and gender having an impact, and how the culture is contributing for whether recognize mental health or ignore it. So now when I see in schools in India and many other countries where I'm connecting with a lot of people, being a mental health worker myself, I see a huge trend shifting from having an open dialogue, getting this conversation to the drawing room, and not feeling shameful about it. So thank you. This is such a wonderful space that you're all sharing from different contexts, being in different countries, and experiencing your own journey. So maybe let me check with everyone out here from people who are watching us if there are any questions for us so far. In the meanwhile, let me ask the next question. It's very interesting. What are the various factors that contribute to mental health issues in your country? So maybe I'd like to start with Cindy, Rashmi, Morwenna, Summers, and then with Dr. Riza, Carol, Swelen, and Dr. Murthy. Over to you, Cindy.
I'll talk about current ones regarding COVID. I think the lockdown and isolation and restrictions has brought a fair amount of lack or unable to socialize with people. And South Africans are fairly outdoorish people, love to be outdoor, love socializing, family orientated, and there is a saying that a community raises a child, not just two or three people. And so all the kind of socializing, being around people, and COVID, putting some restrictions and all that, created a space of isolation for many. And, in simple ways, it was not being able to help out a neighbor and do some, shopping for somebody that couldn't, not being able to visit somebody that you would regularly visit, like a family member, and supporting them. So it is simple pieces of everyday support that couldn't be offered to others, which created a fair amount of stress, anxiety, loneliness in people. So I think current space brought about issues that arrived out of restrictions and lockdown.
True, true. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Over to you, Rashmi.
Personally, Paras, I don't know how much you and Dr. Murthy would agree, but I personally feel that India is a patriarchal society, and there were very clear divides on behavior, that men would never cry, men would never vent their emotions in public, and men would never say, I can't. While women were permitted to cry in the kitchen and inside the house because they were anyway not coming out and talking to society. So a successful man is a man who puts a brave front, and a woman who wipes her tears before she steps out and just stands next to her husband, perfectly smiling, is a happy family. But sadly, that isn't the truth anymore. I think a generation prior is when things slowly started shifting, and people started understanding that if men cry, it's okay. Men should cry because you never know when they would break. And those kind of changes slowly happened. I'm happy it's happening. And I'm a mother of two boys, so I've made sure they cry rather than hold their emotions because they're boys. And I feel that makes them more vulnerable and authentic. And I have seen the shift happening around me. Whichever class we belong to, I feel now that social stigma of talking, at least in our private circles, has opened up slightly. So I feel happy in the space that I am and making sure that this topic can be spoken about and people are open about explaining themselves, all my friends, men and women. And suddenly I feel blessed for the pandemic. I don't know whether I'm right saying this, because now real conversations are happening. People are speaking somewhere. Till some time back, we lived in the artificial world of social media and we all put a Facebook picture. Now we are dropping the Facebook pictures and talking real conversations. So I feel in a way, we have reached out to family who we had not spoken to in a long time because we didn't have time. Now the connects are happening virtually and people are in fact, sharing whether, the thing is, death at these times cannot be mourned physically. So people get together virtually and speak about the person. So our birthdays and anniversaries also. Suddenly people are connecting, and I feel this is beautiful. I can see the shift in India and people that I am with. So I'm really happy that in the last 6 months, people are slowly giving people more value than things. So we are slowly turning human beings from the human doings that we were. So
I agree with you about so many things, and thanks for bringing it out and talking about it loud. There is a patriarchy. In fact, from the cultural lens, if I look at in the Asian countries, there's always been there's always been some sort of authority figures, and now in certain contexts there is a patriarchy or matriarchy system that holds, and that also has a deeper impact on the whole family picture that comes out. So thanks for bringing that. Yeah. Over to you, Morwenna.
Thank you. I wasn't sure how to interpret this question really. So with the various factors, I mean, I was sort of thinking obviously how it's been in the last 6 months, the pandemic, and one of the areas of interest for me is disability and barriers that people face. So a lot of people were having a really hard time before the pandemic, and that's only kind of become exponentially harder for them. So I think that's kind of interesting. I think it's strange. It was such a strange thing. I think the whole world, in a way, has PTSD. We've gone through this bizarre event of 6 months or plus that we've just never encountered before. Most of our generations have never been through a war, or most of us, luckily, we've led pretty kind of comfortable lives, and it's just pulled the rug from our feet. So I think we talk in the UK about mental health being a bit of a ticking time bomb, and I think that's true. I think people are going to be, delayed. They may have delayed reactions further on down the line that we're not prepared for. And my son's school, I know they've employed a full-time counsellor, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and the waiting list is huge. So I think there's huge demand for this. I read an interesting article as well that said, in a sense, we've all been disabled. Our lives have been curtailed. Our normal lives have been kind of denied to us, and that's a really interesting idea, I think, for people. And I also read something that said we kind of hit a 6-month wall with these kinds of things. We can just about handle 6 months of something, but then more than that, we just kind of go, oh, I can't do this anymore. And so I think there's a real lethargy, a real kind of exhaustion in this country of we've just had enough. But unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of, find the strength from within to keep going. And I think that's going to be the challenge for us for the next the coming months in this country.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I think it resonates with a tough time never lasts, tough people do it. So keep having that hope within and carry, I think, which is going to make another way, another move. Summers, you're also a mental health nurse, so I'm very curious to check your perspective on the same. You're on mute, Summers. Yeah.
Just like Morwenna, really, I was a little bit confused about the question because I suppose there's so many factors that you can talk about. I think that analogy is sort of saying the comparison with PTSD over the last 6 months that everyone kind of feels is, well, yeah, it's quite accurate, really. I think COVID's just, to be honest, I feel like mental health services, perhaps not certain sort of sectors. Like I used to work in forensics, and I think that's quite well funded because the government, they pay a lot towards it, things like that. But community mental health teams, they were, I can't think of a better word other than shambles as it was before lockdown. So I'd hate to see the state of them at the moment. People already weren't getting the help that they need. I just think there's so many kind of factors, I suppose, like the lack of funding given by the government. Mental health services has always been seen as the kind of Cinderella of the NHS, neglected, underfunded, just not invited to the ball, really. I think for people in poverty, if you can't feed your kids, the last thing you're going to be thinking about is paying privately for counselling, even if without that counselling, you're not going to be as good a parent to your children. But, I don't know, I wonder if the kind of like the internet has a factor to play in it, really, because especially young people these days, that there's a massive rise in mental health problems amongst children. But is that a rise in mental health problems, or is that just more children talking about mental health problems? I'm not sure, but I do question whether kind of having this constant online presence, with your phone and your laptop and TV and just media everywhere, like plays a factor. I'm not sure if it's necessarily healthy. But yeah, also things like other people were talking about sexism, racism, homophobia, or things like that, I think can have a detrimental impact.
Thank you, Summers. Dr. Riza, you've been quite a lot. Let me check your thoughts on the same.
Well, I'm kind of confused because I'm not a mental health expert. And I think my contribution would come from two different areas. Nobody's perfect. I'm a banker, and I'm serving as this coaching and mentoring platform globally. I think the dilemma here, if I may be blunt, both the politicians and the big business are finding ways to benefit from this problem. In every country, domestic violence to degrading health care. On one hand, the big pharma, at the same time, these big technology companies, like the big 6 companies in US, their total market cap, $7.5 trillion, which is more than this almost 2,300 Japanese companies altogether. They make up the Tokyo Stock Exchange. So, what is this? And then this weapon, the arm freedom in US debate. And then this cannabis, New Zealand. We just celebrated the female leadership. And at the same election, they also made a referendum to make cannabis use legal and free. I'm really confused what the word leaders or as humanity, where we are heading. So on one hand, we know that it's a growing issue, and increasing awareness is helping us to be aware of this issue. But at the same time, humanity gets organized in such a way to create even more value out of this amazing problem. And we have so many indicators now. I think it's a global issue everywhere in the world. The mental health is degrading. So it's never been so much suicide, depression, whatever you name it. Okay, so in every country, there are indications that things are going in the wrong direction. So what I can bring as a solution, I think the solution lies with people. And I think what you're doing here is maybe the best we can do. Because at the end of the day, the tools and techniques and the awareness that people, the ordinary people can get in order to protect themselves from the side effects of everything we're talking about is possible. Especially, with technology, with all these apps and everything, maybe the cure is in the disease. So, I will just now stop here, but as we've seen, I think I'm trying to bring this. There is a role that even coaching and mentoring, very basic techniques, can play a basic role in raising the awareness of people in order to fight against, I would say, the evil.
Thank you. I think what you're raising an awareness out here is that there are various ways we could reach to mental health support. It's just not only about medication and about therapy, but also just by having an unconditional positive regards to your people around and just talking and see whether that talk therapy, talk conversation, talk coaching can also support not getting it very worst. So thanks for that. And there are many other aspects that you brought, and it's pretty thought provoking. Thank you once again for the same. How about you, Carol?
Yeah, interesting. Listening to my sort of to people from the UK and how we all have a different vision of what we appear to be seeing. For me, recently, I suppose the the factors that are contributing to mental health from some of the people I've worked with is a loss of self-worth. So they feel that in some cases, yes, their jobs have been taken away, but equally with the continuous restrictions, that they've lost the structure to their day, they've lost their own control of how they manage. And I think that has contributed to, factors of well-being. And I suppose, as Morwenna said, it's 6 months, and now we're to the stage where there's so much frustration with politics, with government, and now we're being sort of out in different parts of the country. There's so much confusion now that is in ability. So I think it's making the space available to support people, just to be able to speak their emotions, to say what they're feeling, rather than it to build up to anger and frustration. So I think it's just sometimes letting that space be available and encouraging people to support each other. But equally, how the communities come together in this pandemic is incredible. How people have helped out, whereas they probably didn't even know. And I speak for myself personally, know my neighbours, but we got to know each other, support and helping out. So there's lots of positive things going on, but a lot of factors still add to that frustration. So I don't think it's going to change overnight. I think we all have to work together to be there for everybody. So that's my perspective on the UK from where I am.
Thank you, Carol, once again. And how about you, Swee Lin?
Hi. Yes. So I think the fact. So if I were to think about the factors bringing about mental health issues, I would categorize as 3 different levels. The first could potentially be genetic. Could be that someone is born with a real medical condition that has led to a mental health issue, right? And the second could probably be trauma, things that had led to something happened in childhood or something happened in life, some abuse that led to maybe a mental health issue. And the third could be the environment, the lifestyle, or the mindset. And I think it is the third that is the most scary of the lot, because that's the one that can just creep into us and we don't even realize when it has caught up to us. So one example would be like some of my clients, especially in these times. One of them that I know, a very, very talented executive, and she's started to work 18 hours a day. That's led her to not have any time to eat, sleep, or take care of her own self. So in the end, she said, do I need psychiatric help? And this is someone who is a fully functioning executive, right? Just because the issue, just because she had to work so hard, non-stop online, because of what the pandemic has brought about, the lifestyle that has led her to potentially having a really serious mental health issue. Another case is another client of mine who got retrenched, and he went into depression because she started getting anxious that she's not going to get a job quick enough. But as it turned out, she actually got a new job before she even left her old company. But because of that anxiety, that mindset that maybe I cannot get a job, led her to nearly going into depression, right? But fortunately, because her company had engaged our company as a career transition coaches, so we could support her to get a job, and she got one very quickly. A third that I can quote would be somebody who she said she's again a team leader, very high up there, but she doesn't have the confidence. So she herself had this anxiety, kind of performance anxiety. She wants to be able to match up to certain things. And I think a lot of our society nowadays, especially the young with the social media, like what Summers was saying, because they are so much into, I want to keep up with the Jonases, that a lot of the mental health issues that they have are brought on because of their mindset. So what if we could have a space for them to actually allow them to voice out some of these anxieties? What if we could have a space for them to be able to articulate what's going on for them, so that they don't feel the shame, they don't feel that the guilt, they don't feel the being judged by people. So what if we could provide them with that? I think we could actually help to manage the mental well-being of the community before it becomes a mental health issue.
True. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you once again, Sweelan, for bringing your perspective. I just want to check with Dr. Murthy. How are you? And just want to check in. What are your thoughts on the same? You're on mute, Dr. Murthy.
Sorry. I couldn't agree more with what Ms. Shetty has said about the culture, the stereotyping of men and women in the Indian society. Especially, when it comes to women, they are the deprived lot. I was earlier talking about India consisting of 600,000 villages and all that. In many of the families, women are still considered as the ones who are responsible for taking care of the family. I had seen it in my own family. I was born in one of those male-dominated families consisting of mostly men. And I had seen my mother, cooking food for the entire family, and finally she has had the mental issues. Even now also I see her day in and day out facing those issues. So that's a major issue in India. That's one of the factors that contribute to the mental issues. The second thing, it sounds a bit paradoxical, but the education system. I'm saying it paradoxical because India is known for its talent. It has given talent to the world. But at the same time, the kind of education system we have, it doesn't really stimulate the thinking. It's the kind of, just to give you an example, we have these coaching centers. In India, everybody would aspire to become either a doctor or an engineer, mostly engineers. And there are these, they call it as the coaching centers for coaching the students for either engineering or medicine. What they do is the students would stay there in these coaching centers. They would wake up the students at 3 o'clock in the morning, until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, the students will have to study. That's it. Mug it up and by heart everything. Go there and write the exam well and get your admission into the engineering seat. So this is another issue with the Indian education system. At that stage itself, a lot of anxiety and depression and even suicides. We come to know about students committing suicides. So this is again another factor that's contributing to the mental health issues in India. And finally, I would say, having spent 30 plus years with the corporates, the work ethic of Indians are known as very, very hardworking lot, which is true. But at the same time, Indians don't have the boundaries. We don't stop working. We work till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And in many of the Indian organizations, performance is equivalent to hard work. How many hours you have spent at the workplace is the denominator for determining the performance of people. It's sad, it's unfortunate. That is also leading to a lot of these mental health issues, is my perspective.
Thank you for highlighting that. I think I could resonate a lot of people that I've been saying about there are no hours, there are no boundaries, and that leads to not able to even address their own emotional energy and leads to a lot of violence at different spaces. So you tend to suppress it somewhere, but it comes out like it's locking the cat and meeting her after 5 days. Wide open there.
Absolutely.
So I just want to check, we've been talking a lot and people are sharing different perspective of their own country and their own realities. How are you all feeling listening to people out here from all the panelists? How are you feeling? Just want to quickly check with everyone, just maybe a one-liner. How are you feeling listening to different perspectives of people? Anyone would like to just jump in? Just go ahead, sir. Rashmi?
Yeah, okay. I essentially am feeling that there's this one beautiful statement in India called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So I feel the world is one family. The borders have been man-drawn anyway. Nature had not drawn us into different countries. And I can see we are moving into a borderless world where all of us are having similar challenges. Our thinking is more or less similar. Our hopes are more or less strong. So I think you said one-liner, so I'll stay with that.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to just share your thoughts on how are you feeling at this moment? Listening, watching, observing people, and learning from them. Everything.
I'm feeling a bit sad, I would say, listening to the mental health issues. It's like Ms. Shetty has said, it is common across the globe. It's unfortunate. And also, it leaves me with the thought that there is so much that can be done. And I really want to appreciate you and Rita for doing such a great work in this space. That's my feeling at this point.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your guys. Anyone else? Just want to quickly check in before I could move on to the next question.
I'll go next.
Yes,
I
indeed.
feel that we have connected and got together here for a greater good or some purpose, to highlight and continue a conversation that was otherwise a quiet one. And I think that the more we do these pieces of connections, the more perhaps we could link with each other around the world to create a bigger voice. I don't imagine this would happen overnight, but I imagine that change would come faster than what it is.
Absolutely. I could resonate very much with your thoughts, indeed. So, yes, Sweden.
Yeah, and I completely agree with what Cindy said. I think that right now one of our biggest obstacles is the stigma that's attached. And if we could create more conversations and dialogues around this, that it's not a stigma, it's as common as COVID, right? So what's wrong with having mental health issues? Because we are human beings. And it sounds like from this panel itself, we agree that it's a normal thing, right? So what if we could create conversations like that in the community out there, in the society out there, that is not a stigma? And all we need is to lend love to each other so that we can prevent this together.
Thank you, Sweden, for the same. And as Dr. Riza said, I'm not a mental health worker or I'm not into mental health, but that's the question because I called people from different parts of the world, just not being a counselor or therapist or a doctor in psychiatry. I called out people who are healers, coaches, mental health workers, as well as doing various different jobs, maybe doing working in supporting people. So my next question to all of you here is, then what other modalities apart from therapy, counseling, and medicines contribute to combat mental health issues? Maybe I'd like to start with Morwenna and Swee, followed by Dr. Murthy, Carol, and then Dr. Riza, Rashmi, Summers, and Cindy. Over to you, Morwenna.
Thanks, Paris. So I think, as we've all said in the UK, there's never enough money for formal services, formal mental health services. But I think, as other people have said, that the good thing that's come out of the pandemic, particularly in the UK, and I'm guessing all over the world, is that communities have done a lot themselves. And I think that's probably where the answers are going to come from, is that local solutions and local, groups, community groups, and that could be, linked to your work or linked to where you live or whatever. So at work, in my day job, we have a disability network. And within that, we have a neurodiversity group, and we have monthly calls, and we have buddies. And so we kind of support each other in that way. And I think those kinds of more informal things, obviously recognizing that we're not mental health professionals, and, doing that kind of safeguarding stuff is really important. But I don't think we're going to be able to rely on formal services. So we're going to have to get more resourceful. And if we can do that on a global basis and learn from each other, then I think that would be absolutely amazing. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but I think Tavamitram is a really good place to start. Yeah.
Thank you. So I get a sense from moving from hospitals to communities at large. Thank you. How about you, Swee?
Well, I completely agree that Tavamitram is a good start. And as a coach, I think I'm a bit biased. I do have a personal bias that coaches can actually help prevent mental illness before it occurs. And I think the other thing is we need to create a human community of relationships where people can feel loved. They can feel the space of not being judged, not being shamed, not being having to be something. And if we could create little pods of or little circles of reflective dialogue groups where people can come together, just be themselves. I think that could be one of the ways where some of these anxieties and stresses can actually be caught. There's a space to catch them before they actually grow into something else. And then I think there's one other modality that we'd like to talk about, and as a student, as one of the many students of Hai Shin Guang Bo, and this is someone that I think I spoke about to you, Dr. Paras, while in Mumbai. She's an award-winning epoch-making researcher in Kuang Linya Aggregated, and who has spent more than 28 years of research in this field. So she uses her research outcome is on Kuang Linya Aggregated, and is to transmit positive energy, to light transmute the negative energy field. So this is a field on its own, and it's a pretty new field. So from her research, she found that 69 to 73% of illnesses is caused by the upheaval disturbance of Earth. So I've seen through her as well, many people coming from wide and far, where with simple mental issues like anxiety, depression, to major health issues like Down syndrome, autism, suicidal tendencies, they had them resolved by coming to her for consultation, and through the application of Kuang Linya Aggregated and her techniques. So that's one of the modalities that I've seen that has worked. And it's sustainable. So I think that there's a combination of using the certain modalities that can support, as well as the relationship conversations and dialogues.
Thank you, Swee. I personally had a very transformational experience when I met you in Mumbai this year, February. And I could say, I can vouch out there are so alternative ways that you did was so powerful that something changed. And I think my mom also was going through a little, some sort of fear on the shoulder space, which was more psychosomatic. And with the space that you created was not just about coaching and consulting and counseling, maybe some other alternative healing process, and it really changed. So I also agree that today people, in fact, one of the depression presentation in one of the forums, it talked about that acupressure, acupuncture, massage therapy, hypnosis are also contributing to reduce the depression and coming out of mental health issues. So there's so many different ways we are looking today, not just about therapy or counseling or medicines. People are healing in different ways. So thanks for endorsing and bringing different perspective here. Over to you, Dr. Murthy.
Yeah, see, from my perspective, some of the other modalities could be one is, the mindfulness training, the mindfulness. In most of the schools in UK, mindfulness is taught at the school level. I think that, there is an opportunity for looking at that particular aspect, right from the childhood. Training the children on mindfulness is one thing, which could alleviate this mental health issues. That's one thing I would say. And the other thing is, I would be a bit generic here. It's what happens is, when we look at these mental health issues, as we grow up, we stop doing some of the things which we did as children. Say, for example, playing. Somebody was talking about playing. We stop playing as adults. We don't play. We don't even laugh. So these are some of the things which would go on to create that anxiety and lead to depression and other mental health issues. And then I also would say, I was earlier talking about the corporates. I think that somatic leadership techniques, that's, out of my experience, I have found that very, very useful.
True.
So teaching the leaders or the people working in corporates or in various workplaces about the posture, how do you stand, how do you protect yourself in terms of your somatic aspects, would be quite helpful in addressing these issues. That's my perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy. I think somatic and connecting to body is one of the other ways to look at what's happening to you and how can you protect yourself going and leading to further damage. So thanks for that. Carol, over to you. You're on mute, Carol. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So I was reflecting on sort of some of the local issues and how it's been approached by school children in the last 6 months. And one of the local schools have got together and they've created a way for the children to voice their concerns, and they've called it creative art thinking. They've not been able to communicate on some occasions, but they've got pictures and they can either draw them by themselves at home and bring them to the group, or they can draw them in the session, and they don't have to put their names. They're trying to tell pictures of their feelings and thoughts through creative art. Recently they've started doing sort of creative writing, so they're writing their journey of their experiences. And one school that it does now gone on to take this into another school, so the children themselves have gone into this other school to explain how they came together to share their anxiety. So it was a real learning for everybody. And in terms of the corporate world, one of the interesting ones I came across recently, there's a new sort of organisation called ProMats, and they're trying to introduce into the corporate world. Everybody should have half an hour a day where they close their eyes and have a nap. And this has actually taken off quite well in terms of mental well-being. So I think there's lots of new things that are coming onto the agenda to try and help ways. So watch this space, I think, is what we're looking at the moment.
Thank you. How about you, Dr. Riza?
Well, let me be the devil's advocate here. With so many experts, so many good ideas, so many good solutions, but as long as we don't make it scalable, and the scale comes from technology. And technology, the 6 big companies, if you find a way to convince them, the impact will be huge. The technology is the gaming industry. I don't know this age group, but let me tell you, the gaming industry globally, especially when we have this 5G, is exponentially taking over even television, Hollywood, whatever, everything. So what do we do to have an impact on the gaming industry globally? Because if all those games are really detrimental of the mental health of their players, there are, I think, 2 industries, calling their clients users, drug and software industries. There is implicitly something wrong there, okay? So if collectively we don't reach out to those big technology, gaming, whatever industries, and to convince them to embed some of the solutions you're offering here in their own product, services, or whatever, I think it's a lost game. France Telecom, a few years ago, they had a serious issue with suicides. Many people were committing suicide in France Telecom. And as a solution, one of the things they deployed was a chat box. In the middle of the night, you don't feel good, what do? You just plug in, and this chat box, the only goal is to keep you alive till the morning, when you can reach to a professional service or whatever. But in the middle of the night, when you feel really lonely, in France, the employees of France Telecom, and in a way it worked. And I think if we really focused our mind how to make the best use of these technologies, maybe there's a solution. Otherwise, I don't know how we can be optimistic in this game.
Thank you, Dr. Riza. How about you, Rashmi? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, yes, I completely agree with technology that Dr. Riza said. But yesterday I was watching a feature which said when Japan found out that there was an 85% increase in their suicides, just when they became completely materialistic, wanting to improve their economy, stopped living and started only working to be successful and really working hard, there was a shift in the lighting color of the stations that people would cross in the night, because it was almost like they were awake 24/7. And so the people who were taking the metros in the night would have to pass stations which were light blue in color. And just that color had drastically brought down the number of suicides in the country, which was unbelievable when I read it. But that's where I thought that technology, all right, a human connect definitely makes a difference. Somebody gave it a thought like a human, and that's where the difference came about. And that's where I feel leadership can play a role, by not stopping with being empathetic leaders, but moving the empathy to action, being more compassionate. As leaders, opening conversations, creating those spaces in the workplace where I don't feel judged if I come and say I'm having a problem. And I have that freedom to open that space. And another very important thing, which I think as leaders, coaches, wherever we are, to whoever we are speaking, we can tell them to guiltlessly get into the mode of self-love. Because if we don't give ourselves care and attention, how can we give it to the people around us? Yeah. Because if we start with ourselves, self-compassion and self-love, not only would we bloom, but we'd make sure the radiation just passes around, because I still believe human beings really can empower one another with the energy and the talk that we have. So I think this is where I believe that human beings can make a big difference.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing about even self-love and self-gratitude. It's so very important for all of us. Unless we are not wearing our oxygen mask, how can I really support somebody else? So
exactly.
It's a brilliant point. Summer, how are you? And just want to check in with you, your thoughts on the same. You're mute, Summer. Yeah.
Yeah, and the ways that I manage my mental health besides those modalities are, I think exercise plays quite an important factor in my mental health. Like I love boxing and I love martial arts, and I think it's not just the actual exercise itself, because I do like running, but that tends to be a more solitary act. I think the kind of the being part of something, the being part of a group thing, the socializing, is quite helpful. I think creative writing for me is something that I find really helpful. I'm currently studying a master's in it at the moment, and just sort of being able to express myself can be quite therapeutic. I've done journaling for about a year so far, and I would suggest to my patients actually doing things like this, creative writing, art, things like that. Music, I find, can be quite helpful. I think diet is important, and sort of like, going back to basics, diet, sleep, wake habits, things like that. I know it sounds sort of simple, but I find getting up at the same time every day and trying to go to bed at the same time every day, it just makes such a massive difference for me. I think support groups as well, they help. I'm not sure if they sort of count as therapy, but I do find support groups really helpful. Any way of just sort of expressing my feelings is beneficial, and I kind of, I sort of pass that on to my patients when I can, and anyone really.
Thanks, Summer, for adding so many thoughts about alternative ways to be mentally fit. How about you, Cindy?
So what is said, and I won't repeat anything. But what I'd like to add is that, at a very simple level, mental wellness, mental health can be addressed on a very family and community-based environment. It can start at home when we notice our children or children around us experiencing this anxiety and provide support, or do referrals to some kind of resource around them. So I think we could open that space at some level. And then as coaches, we try helping our clients unpack, realize, discover potential. And if we could do this more regularly with more people, especially people that are quite stressed out or tense and some kind of anxiety, if we could have conversations that will help them do some things around their potential, doing things they love. Just a mere act. What are opportunities available right now for do the things you love? At least one thing. What kind of mindset change into more positive mental state than the one they're currently in? I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm a very follower of Teoh, and what he talks about is your mind has a tendency to think. So if you don't keep it busy with some mindful things, it will end up taking a toll on you, and it will end up into something else. So that's something resonates a lot more to how are you going to keep yourself engaging your mind to be busy in more constructive way. I'm also very mindful about the time that we all in. So just let me start with the conclusion, what I'm taking from this discussion. So Tavamitram, in their 11th panel discussion today, wanted to understand the global perspective of mental health. What I learned from the varied perspective of experts from different countries and culture is that we all have different minds, but one world battling several issues that are almost similar. Just the approach towards looking at these problems may be different. I think the need of the hour for all of us in these tough times is to be there for each other. Humanity, kindness, compassion, needs to be practiced. So positive mental health can be conceptualized as including a positive sense of well-being, individual resources including self-esteem, optimism, and sense of mastery and coherence, the ability to initiate, develop, and sustain mutually satisfying relationships, and the ability to cope with adversity. I think it's a high time to move from exclusion to inclusion. As Dr. Riza says, inclusion is a feeling, and I agree with that. From individual thinking to community, I think my whole panel talks about how to think about more community rather than just thinking individual. And living from shame to open communication, I would agree to each and every panelist who's talking about bringing this conversation to the drawing room, talking to friends, reaching out to people. So let's take our journey ahead towards a better mental well-being today. So I would request each panel members to share one message to all the people in this pandemic they are going through, struggling. What is that one message that you would like to share with everybody? I would probably invite Swee, Cindy, then Dr. Riza, Summers, Carol, Dr. Murthy, Morwenna, and Rashmi. Over to you, Swee.
Thank you, Dr. Faraz. Thanks for a beautiful summary of the whole panel. For me, I think every situation that happens in our lives happens for a reason, and it's a gift. Even at the worst times of our lives, it's a gift. So I would say take this, if this was a gift and this is a learning moment, what is it that we need to learn from this, and how can we reinvent ourselves in the heat of this whole pandemic? So rather than take it as a bad situation, take it as a positive situation. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Changing the perspective is very important, need of the hour. Yes. Over to you, Cindy.
I would simply say if you're feeling mental health is becoming an issue for you, your mental health, then reach out, find a way or find someone to reach out to.
Thank you, Cindy. Yes, over to you, Dr. Riza.
Many factors are increasing the feeling of loneliness. But at the same time, we are all in this together. So on one hand, we all feel lonely, and that exacerbates and makes things worse for mental health. But at the same time, with this COVID pandemic, for example, EMCC, we found so many ways to get connected with each other. So I think people should be aware that there are alternatives, options to get over the loneliness.
Absolutely. And I could agree a lot with Dr. Riza. With EMCC, there were so many coaches and even other coaches all over the globe moving up, reaching out to people and asking them, hey, come on, at any point of time, if you are there, you're not alone. So I think all the coaches out here, healers out here, mental health workers out here are doing a superb job of reaching out and supporting mankind. Thank you. Thank you for that. Summers?
I'd say just try and be honest with your emotions, but equally recognize that there are both constructive and destructive ways to act on your individual feelings. I think authenticity and self-regulation shouldn't be mutually exclusive. So find the best and most healthy ways to express yourself, and always try and be kind to yourself and other people.
Thank you. I resonate a lot about being kind to self is very important. Yeah. Over to Carol.
For me, it's just reflecting on how we've all become globally connected and we're sharing the pain, but I think we're also sharing the gain. And for me, it's just thinking about how the world in some way has recharged. Rivers are cleaner, flowers are appearing that have never appeared before in my lifetime. So there's lots of good happening out there. And it's reaching out to people and just encouraging them to see that there are poor things still happening as a result of pain. Sometimes we have to go through the pain for the gain. So there's lots to look forward to.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Dr. Murthy?
I would say that the pandemic has brought in a lot of hardship to all of us. And my advice is wherever there is a possibility, I think bringing back something which we did as children. It's whether it is singing, dancing, playing, whatever is possible. I think that that is one thing we could look at it as an opportunity. And when we start doing that, I think some of our anxieties could be well addressed. That would be my
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Murthy. Morwenna?
Thank you. I think for me, what I'm taking today is, and what I try to do for myself and for clients and so on, is just to find something that brings you joy every day. It can be really simple things, and particularly I think what's really come to the UK is enjoying nature in the pandemic, and being outside as much as you possibly can and connecting in that kind of way. But yeah, just do things that give you joy.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Morwenna. Rashmi?
Well, one big lesson, ask for help when you need it, don't hesitate. It's all about just taking that one step to ask for help and you will get it. But I'd love to conclude with Rabindranath Tagore's quote, which is about nature, because nothing else has taught us better than nature in this pandemic. Nature endures. And this quote is, "The butterfly counts not months, but moments, and has enough time." So I think there is enough time for us to make do with everything that we want. Life is beautiful and precious. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you. Such a lovely message to have a beautiful closure. So, first of all, I'd like to sincerely pay my gratitude to all the panel members out here for sharing your valuable time, contributing your thoughts, your skills, your time, and helping Tavamitram to raise mental health awareness. We at Tavamitram highly value your contribution. Also, the rest of the people who are watching us, if you haven't signed up for My Mental Health, My Priority campaign, then register yourself on the below link and get the access for the free certification program. Also, you can join us at via Global Mitra Volunteer today by logging to our website, that is www.tavamitram.org. And in case if you have any queries or questions, please email us at info@tavamitram.org or Dr. Paras at tavamitram.org. We have series of panel discussion this month, so please do check out the schedule on our website, which is www.tavamitram.org. And a very exciting news, we are going live tomorrow on the occasion of Dasara. The topic is "You Are Stronger Than You Think" at 12 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And the discussion is in both English and Marathi, the local language. Also, kindly accept my personal invitation and join me tomorrow at 12 p.m. For any updates on this drive, please follow us on the Facebook page and Insta handle at Tavamitram, or you can subscribe our channel, YouTube channel, Dr. Paras. So a warm welcome and warm thank you to all people. I think it's an ongoing journey, and thank you for sharing your space and sharing your knowledge and wisdom this evening. I would like to just thank you and namaste to everybody. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, Paras, for this lovely space.
Same here. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.